So I had no idea that the video that I posted about my acoustic rig was going to get so many views. And so I made some changes, and I figured just based on that and some of the comments and some folks that were contacting me off of YouTube and such to ask questions and things, I figured I'd go ahead and post a little bit of an update. I've changed a few things. I've added couple things actually since the last time. But I'll talk about a few other things as well too, power and some other stuff and cables and everything else. I actually just got finished re-cabling some stuff with the Georgel cables here, and found that the cables that I've just made on my own ended up working better. So the stuff that's changed, the first thing that I added here was this System 10 Audio Technica wireless. And so I've got on my Taylor over here, I've got the battery backpack here, and got that stuff working, and I've been pretty happy with it. The thing that you got to remember with this thing, and I messed up when I first kind of started putting everything together, was that this thing takes 12 volts, not 9 volts. And so I was getting all kinds of noise and everything else. The crazy thing was it was actually working. When I would plug it in to 9 volts, it was actually working a little bit, and I would get signal, but it was incredibly noisy. So if you end up with something like that, make sure that you check those things out. I had another pedal on here that I took off. I had one of those the TC Helicon. It was a vocal, basically just a reverb that I used, but I quit. I just decided to take it off, and that thing actually took 12 volts. So I just moved the cable over to the Audio Technica, and that ended up working out pretty well. And so the cool thing about those Georgels is that you can actually come in and make these little custom cables, try to get the cable runs as small as you can get them. So I was able to make a little custom cable there. So the signal path basically comes from the wireless, obviously, from my guitar to the wireless, and then comes into this the LR Bags venue, and then there is a effects loop here on the venue. So there's a send here, and then the receive back here, and so basically everything else on the pedal board, pretty much in order almost, from this way here, comes to the effects loop and then comes back in, and then we get a balanced XLR out to the board over here. And the venue is really cool. I like it a lot. The tuner is a little sketchy, so I do keep one on my headstock, like a little portable one. It works about 70% of the time, but you'll switch over here, and then it'll just, you'll just get something blank. So you can kind of hit this a few times, switch back and forth, and sometimes it'll work. If not, then I just revert to the one that's on my headstock. And so as you can see here, it's basically just a parametric EQ, and I love it, and it works super great. Been really happy with it, and can't imagine changing to anything else. The boost is kind of cool. I'm not sure how much boost it is, maybe 10 dB or something like that. I don't actually use that very often. Occasionally I'll use it, but not very often. And then so from there through the send and receive to the loop here, the first place I go over to is this Empress, this paraEQ, and I bought this pedal a long time ago, and then it just was kind of sitting around, and I thought, hey, this would be cool. It's a really high-end pedal. I mean, I think brand new those things are like 250 bucks. I happened to buy it used off of somebody here local where I live, so I bought it for less than that. But these pedals are really well made. And they are super quiet, which is really nice, and I love it. It basically adds, over here I get 3 bands of parametric EQ over here, and then I get 3 bands over here. But I don't know if you can see, this thing actually gives you a lot more flexibility here. It does also have a boost as well, which once again I don't ever use, but you can adjust the Q here, which is really cool. So obviously, basically the slope, or the, if you want to get very granular on a frequency, or if you want to, sort of semi-wide around that frequency, and then of course here, you're taking a big chunk out. and it's 30 dB of boost, and it's really nice. It's especially nice for acoustic guitar, where there's always those you know, kinds of interesting frequencies. Like you can see here up on the high end for me and my Taylor here, somewhere around, you know, 1.6 or something like that, or this is probably around 1.2 or so. I was able to pull a little bit of that out. So really cool there. I really like that EQ a lot. And then from there, we actually come out and go into this, what we call the, I don't know how you say this, Akko, I guess, maybe, Okko. It's a company in Germany that makes this compressor, and it's really cool. It kind of reminds me of like an LA2A type compressor, where you just have a knob here for gain, and then this is a sing, which is basically like a functions like the compression. So if you crank this thing up, then you start to get that really, you know, kind of very compressed sound. If I recall right, I think like 10 o'clock is unity for both of these. So I don't really use it for an effect so much. It's just nice. It actually adds a really nice tone to the sound, and then it just balances everything out really nice. You know, that way, if you're playing a little bit lighter, if you're playing a little bit harder, you sort of get the same kind of balance across the board. But it does actually impart a little bit of a tone, a warmth, I guess. I hate using that term, but it sort of imparts a little bit of that to the signal, and I just really like it. And then the delay that I use, which is also not very often, and just you know, very subtle even when I do, is this Capistan, which is a tape delay or a tape echo, and it's pretty fabulous too. And then from there, go over to the Big Sky, which is Strymon's. They have a couple different reverbs. There's the Blue Sky and the Big Sky, and so the Big Sky is the one that I'm using, and it's also super killer. I think probably for pedal board stuff or for foot switch kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure it's probably the best reverb pedal that's out there right now. The DSP in here is pretty incredible. The thing that you have to remember with these pedals in particular is that they use a lot of power, and so the power that I use here is this T-Rex, and I think it's called a Chameleon, and it works out good. It fits perfectly, you know, nice up underneath the board there, right in between, and of course in all these different power supply configurations, you end up with a number of different plugs, and each of those will supply a certain amount of voltage and however many milliamps. And so what you can see on a lot of these different plugs, I think, I'm not sure, you can't really see it because I got it all tied up, but you can get those plugs that daisy chain. So come out of the power, you get the little 9-volt connector, and then you'll have like 2 or 3 that you can daisy chain off of one plug. Well, a lot of times each of these plugs only supplies 300 milliamps of power. So in which case each plug, I mean, I had to have a dedicated plug going to each of these pedals. If I tried to plug something in here and then piggyback this one off of the back of it, it's not enough power. And so sometimes the pedals will work, but they'll be very noisy, or they won't work at all. So keep that in mind when you're planning out whatever power configuration, how many pedals you're going to have, because some of them don't use a lot at all. Like the Empress over here, it only uses like 85 milliamps of power. And then the Ditto over here, the Ditto 2, I think is what we call this. I think it uses 100 milliamps or less as well too. So some pedals don't use very much, and some pedals use a lot, and then you'll have some pedals, like once again up here, that's actually a 12-volt pedal. So make sure you really understand what you're putting on your board first before you go look at power. The T-Rex Chameleon, I've been super happy with it. It has the ability in a dip switch configuration to change certain ports into, you know, different voltage configurations, and so I was able to do that. Like I said, I had that Helicon pedal up here, and I used that 12-volt power to actually come over here and power this thing. And so interestingly enough, like I said, you could plug a 9-volt power into this. This actually will take up to 18 volts, but you can plug a 9-volt power into this, and it'll power up, and all the lights will come on, and it'll actually get signal, but it'll be noisy as heck. And so yeah, once again, come from the delay over into the reverb, and then the last piece of the chain here is this Ditto looper, and then it comes back and closes up the loop here, and comes back up, and of course from there we send this out to the board. And so basically, you know, that's it. You know, it sounds incredible. I love the flexibility, especially having a couple of the different parametric EQs. Usually whenever I go to a gig, I pretty much stick with the same guitar. And so I kind of in my head know for the few different acoustics that I use some of the changes that I would make here, but they're not drastic at all in terms of the parametric equalization stuff. Everything else pretty much stays the same across the board. But it's a really great, super flexible rig that sounds really, really good. I've got a couple different Taylors, I've got a Martin, and I've got a Gibson that I play acoustic. And really, like I said, you can plug all of them in and it sounds absolutely phenomenal. Can't say enough either about, you know, once again, these George-L cables. They're a little kind of interesting when you start working on them. Sometimes they won't work right, but I think once you kind of get the general the gist down of how they work, and they're pretty easy to set up and get configured from that point on. But really highly recommend that instead of using some of these other crappy cables like these, for example. Don't use cables like this. I had to in a pinch at one gig. I keep a couple of them in my box of cables and things, and I had to use one of these in a pinch, and they just fall apart and they just don't sound very good, and they're just not very good cables. So you don't want to wire up with something like this. Unfortunately, the George-L, these little packs of George-Ls are really super expensive. I think you can get about 6 cables, so you get, you know, 12 ends, maybe 10 ends or something like that, 5 or 6 cables, and then you get the cable for it. So it's pretty expensive because these are 70, 80 bucks. So, you know, you're paying, you know, 15 bucks or something like that a cable that you make. And so, you know, that gets pretty expensive. But to have it set up right, to not have a bunch of cables and stuff, to have it pretty tight underneath as well, so you're not doing that. This, by the way, this board here is a Pedal Train Junior. And so if you get creative, you can actually get a lot of stuff on here, as you can see. So anyway, that's my pedal board. Hope you guys dig it, and if you have any questions, let me know.